I think the best place for me to start is that it was a very complicated situation yesterday in Townsville, and I thought what we'd try to do is unpack it and go through it in each of its components, and then if obviously you've got any questions, I'm happy to take those questions and deal with them. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was time. So, you know, there's been some discussion around whether the game should have restarted or not after the conversion, and I just wanted to make it clear that the referee has no control over time. There are independent timekeepers that are in touch with the referee through the referee's communication equipment, so they count them down at the end. So the referee can't stop the game until the timekeeper tells him through his earpiece that time has expired. So that had not happened at the time the kick-off took place. So that's the first component, that you know, the referee had no control over that. That's controlled independently. The second component of the incident at the end of the game involved the challenge itself, the captain's challenge. And there's been a lot of discussion around that. And the captain's challenge, as everyone knows, has only been in place for this is the third season of the captain's challenge. And the captain's challenge was introduced to try and make sure that clearly that we get more decisions correct. So give teams the opportunity to challenge decisions where the referee, they believe, has made an error. And across the course of the last 3 seasons that it's been in place, there's been over 360 correct challenges of decisions that would have otherwise been wrong. So it's an important component of our game, and it's intended to try and minimise refereeing errors or officiating errors as much as possible. And it's by those numbers, it's certainly helped to achieve that. The question that arose yesterday was, what was a challenge allowable in those circumstances? And in our view, it was allowable in those circumstances, and it was allowable for a number of reasons. The rules around a captain's challenge talk about you can challenge any decision made by the referee to stop the game. Now, you won't find anywhere in black and white a specific rule that talks about can you make a challenge after time has expired on the last tackle of the game. You won't find that anywhere in black and white. But in this particular case, the referee blows the whistle after he's been told by the timekeeper that time has expired. He blows the whistle to stop play. And that's obviously so that the player in possession of the ball can't just get up and play the ball and we continue on with another tackle. So he blows the whistle to stop play. But that's not the end of the game. That first whistle is not the full-time whistle. That's a whistle to stop play. Now that becomes a stoppage, and the challenge was mounted on the basis of the escort or the obstruction that the Cowboys believed had taken place in that particular play. So whilst it's an unusual situation, if you think about the whole objective of the captain's challenge in the first instance and why it was introduced to try and make sure that when there are errors made by match officials, that there is an option for the team to try and have that error corrected at any time in the game, from the kick-off until the full-time whistle, to try and make sure that, you know, big decisions that made incorrectly by the match officials can be corrected in a review through a captain's challenge. So, you know, there are no boundaries on that other than it must be a stoppage initiated by the referee, and it has to result in a structured restart. And in this case, there was a penalty given, obviously, as a result of this incident, which is a structured restart of play. So in other words, it's not just handed back to the player and said, well, here you go, play the ball and we'll have another tackle. You can't do that because time has expired for just play to continue. So we're comfortable that the challenge, the captain's challenge, was allowable in those circumstances, just as it would have been had the situation been reversed. So if the officials had picked up the obstruction, if there had been in this case, we'll forget about yesterday for the moment, I'll talk about the obstruction in a moment, but in a similar situation, if the officials pick up an obstruction in that situation, so time's expired, we have the short kick-off, players go up for the ball, and there is an obstruction picked up by the referee or the touch judge, and the referee blows the penalty. Time's expired, same as yesterday. Well, of course, in that situation, the Tigers would have been fully entitled to challenge the decision by the referee to award that penalty. Time's expired, same situation, but reversed. So on that basis, we're comfortable. Now, if I move on to the third element, which is the bunker decision itself, to examine the escort, or under the laws of the game it's called an obstruction, to a player that's not in possession of the ball. So we've examined that carefully this morning. We've looked at all the available footage, and we're just not satisfied that there was enough in that incident to warrant the decision of the bunker to award a penalty kick. Yes, there was contact, yes, there was a collision, but we believe that the Western Suburbs player, the West Tigers, player involved was heading towards the ball. He didn't look over his shoulder to see who was coming behind him. Yes, he ran a slightly strange line to head towards the ball, but he was heading towards the ball. And these are matters of judgment from the officials. But on review this morning, we just don't believe there was enough in that to award a penalty, and that the on-field challenge should have been, at that point, dismissed by the bunker as an unsuccessful challenge. So that's where we've landed on what took place at the end of yesterday's game. I'm happy to take any questions arising from that.
Graham, does the captain have to say what they're challenging when a challenge is called? Well,
fair amount of confusion yesterday at the end of the game. The referee, and we have looked at this morning as well, the referee was having trouble hearing the bunker because he had a whole bunch of players around him, and there was obviously a lot of talk going on at that point from both teams. And he walks away from the players on a couple of occasions, and he actually has to ask the bunker to repeat what they were saying on a couple of occasions. What the bunker was clarifying for him was that there was a challenge still remaining, that they did have a challenge available, because the referee, can't really be expected to recall across 80 minutes whether challenges have expired or not, and how many challenges they've had and how many they have remaining. So there is as well as the bunker, there is a match day coach for the referee who sits in the grandstand, and they keep a record of multiple things that take place during the course of the game, and the match day coach confirmed, as well as the bunker, that there was still a challenge remaining. So then the referee says to the captain, "What are you challenging?" And he said, "I'm challenging the escort."
But the escort hadn't been called. That means how can he possibly challenge something that hasn't been called?
Because you can challenge under the laws, you can challenge, it says the captain can challenge decisions by the referee from the point of the stoppage, when the referee blows his whistle for the stoppage, back to the previous play the ball. So anything in that play, from the kick, because we didn't have a play the ball obviously, but from the kick which started that play, can be challenged. They have to identify what they're challenging.
Why? Every time a captain goes to the referee and wants to challenge, the referee says, "What are you challenging?" Or you can challenge it, "What are you challenging?" If that's the case, can't players just every time there's a stoppage in the game, can a player not just say, "We want to challenge the whole play"?
Well, I mean, at any stoppage where the referee makes a decision to stop, I mean, the reason that there has to be a stoppage called by the referee is clearly, when the rule was introduced, we didn't want to have a situation where a player is streaking down the sideline and suddenly another captain saying, "We're challenging the last play the ball," or whatever. It has to be a stoppage. Now, if time hadn't expired, there wouldn't have been a natural stoppage yesterday. But throughout the course of the game, circumstances change and circumstances are different. In this particular case, the referee has to blow his whistle to stop the game because time has expired. That opens up the opportunity for a challenge to be mounted on that particular play back to, as it says, the previous play of the ball, or in this case, the kick-off. So it's, in our view, it's a legitimate challenge. And if you go back to, and I have to keep reinforcing this, what's the intention of the captain's challenge? And remember, they had to have one first, right? If they'd exhausted their challenges, they only get 2. If they'd exhausted their challenges, then no challenge is even allowed to take place. So in this case, they had to have one available, and we had to have a stoppage called by the referee, and then they were allowed to challenge what took place in that particular play.
Sorry. I know you said the rules say anytime there's a stoppage, but the rule says, rule number 2, a challenge is only permissible in instances where the referee makes a decision that results in the match recommencing for a structured restart. The referee's decision is stop the game because the siren's gone.
Yep.
In what world does that lead to a structured restart beyond that?
The penalty kick that was awarded as a result of the challenge. So, look, we can argue semantics about this, and as I said, it's a rule that's only been in place for 3 years. You would need a book on its own to cater for every possible circumstance where a challenge could be mounted. But yes, of course, as I said a moment ago, that if the decision had been, well, no offence occurred there, so we're going back for a play the ball, well, of course that play the ball couldn't take place because time had expired. But it's no different to, again, if time had expired and players tackled on the ground, the referee blows his whistle to say, well, that's the last tackle before I call full time, and a player then dives on top of him with a swinging arm and hits him in the head. We don't just then say, oh, well, we're not going to deal with that, that's just full time, right? Because it happened after time had expired. The referee is still in control of the game and is still able to make rulings on matters of fact until such time as he blows his whistle multiple times, as we've all heard, and then they wave across their chest and say full time. And that is the end of the game. It's not the end of the game when the player falls to the ground and gets tackled. The referee has to blow his whistle once to so that the player can't get up and just simply play the ball. But there is a structured restart from that. And of course, it makes it also clear in the rule that a challenge is permitted for obstruction. So, as I said, we're comfortable, but you won't, we can argue about the semantics. We can argue whether the rule is clear enough or not. But let's go back to the intention of the captain's challenge. And although I've said in this case yesterday, we don't believe there was enough evidence for the bunker to make the decision that they made on the penalty kick, if it had been a more blatant foul, would we all be happy just to say, well, the bunker, all of you guys would be saying, why can't they challenge that? Are we going to let the game be decided on a wrong decision just because of, of a rule or an interpretation of a rule, more so than a rule? So we're comfortable that the intent of the rule was carried through, but unfortunately, we don't think the decision that was made by the bunker was the correct one.
So the intent of the rule, isn't that irrelevant though? In this situation, the Tigers are going to feel that the game should have been over. What the intent of the rule is irrelevant, it's what's in the rule book. And I know you say that it's restarted with a penalty to the Cowboys, but the actual decision wasn't a penalty to the Cowboys, the decision was no decision. There wasn't a decision to even challenge. It was...
No, I'll repeat what I just said a moment ago, that you won't find anything in black and white that refers specifically to what took place yesterday.
The Tigers are appealing this result. Well, it needs to be in black and white, doesn't it? If they're saying that the game was over, and they're referencing the rule book.
I can't deal with what might happen in the future and what the rule might say in the future. I can only deal with what it actually says at the moment. And again, I repeat that there is nothing in the rule that refers specifically to what took place yesterday.
Is that the Tigers have asked to an appeal then, based on the rule book?
No, because I'm not going to make any comment about what action the Tigers may or may not be contemplating, right? That's a matter for them, so that's not up to me. But the referee is the sole judge of fact. From the time he blows the opening whistle until the time he blows the full-time whistle. He makes those decisions, rightly or wrongly, mostly rightly, occasionally wrongly, and occasionally with divided opinion about whether decisions are right or wrong. So, that's always been the situation in our game. This rule was introduced to try and reduce the number of errors that match officials might make. Some of them game determining. Now, this was game determining yesterday, and unfortunately in this case, we've kind of had we've had the double effect of a situation that took place after time had expired and a challenge being mounted, and then the actual determination by the bunker, in our view, not being the right outcome. So, it's kind of all of the stars aligning badly.
Graham, have you told the West Tigers that the bunker decision was incorrect?
Yes, I have. I've spoken. Well, I had a conversation with Tim Sheens earlier this afternoon. I spoke to him last night as well, and I'm sure Tim won't mind me saying this, but we had a conversation last night. I gave him a commitment that we would review it thoroughly this morning, which we've done all morning, and I also gave him a commitment that I would let him know the outcome. And so I've had a conversation with him before this briefing started, and I've explained to him the situation. I've told him our views about the permissibility of the captain's challenge, and I've told him our views about the outcome of the captain's challenge. And look, people will have divided opinion on this because there is nothing you can point to in black and white that specifically refers to what happened yesterday.
What about the decision? I mean, how do you explain that everybody could see what that shouldn't have been a penalty, but the bunker couldn't see that? That's a major flaw in your system.
Well, it's not a major flaw in the system. It's a decision made by an individual. I mean, the system allows for the play to be reviewed, and our system is the equal, if not better, than any other sport in the world in terms of the capability that we've got with the number of camera angles, high definition pictures, people in the bunker who have the technical expertise to operate the equipment, to throw up any angles that the bunker. Well, that's not true. In this case, we don't believe they made the right decision. But there are hundreds of decisions across the course of a year that they do make correctly. There are many, many decisions across the course of the year that would be impossible to make without the assistance of the bunker. Just think about all of those tries by wingers where the acrobatics that they perform to get the ball across the line inside the touching goal line. Those decisions with the naked eye are almost impossible. So, we have to keep things in perspective. Yes, yesterday was, in our view, a wrong decision by the bunker. But let's not forget the countless number of decisions that may have otherwise been wrong had the bunker not been involved. So I think it's unfair to say that they can't get the decisions right. They didn't get yesterday's decision right.
Graham, are you saying that from now on every team with a challenge remaining can challenge the last play before full time?
No, well, it depends under which circumstances.
There was no decision made yesterday. There wasn't a penalty given, there wasn't anything. It was a normal tackle. Dane Laurie took the ball and was tackled. So from now on, every team with a challenge should challenge the last play for an offside or someone not square at marker. Is that basically...
Well, they have to nominate what they're challenging. I mean, there has to be some validity to it, otherwise they're just completely wasting their time, obviously. But there is a precedent for this too. In the State of Origin game in 2020, the deciding State of Origin game in 2020, you might recall that there was an incident where, with New South Wales, I think 6 points behind, Queensland got the ball and just decided to run it across the dead ball line to finish the game. And there was a challenge mounted by New South Wales. So again, time had expired. There'd been no observable offence caused to stop the game.
There is a set restart, which the rule book states. If there is a set restart, then you can challenge. Where that was the case, the ball went dead in that sort. Junior Paula offloaded, and I think Harry Grant took the ball dead.
Yeah, but again, time had expired. What I'm trying to say to you is that we saw a captain's challenge take place after time had expired, where there was no decision by the referee, other than he was just going to call full time, as he was yesterday, right? And then a challenge was mounted. So very, very similar, not the circumstances the same, but the situation was very similar. The referee, the player runs the ball across the dead ball line. The next thing for the referee to do is to blow his whistle to say play stopped, and then to blow full time. But there was a challenge mounted. Now that's what happened yesterday. So again, we can argue semantics about this stuff. I'm the first to acknowledge that we believe that they got the decision wrong yesterday. But if that had been a more blatant decision, you know, is anyone comfortable to say, well, no, we just leave that on the field? We just leave it on the field. The argument that we're having at the moment is because it was a debatable decision, and you know, in our view, and probably in the view of many, the bunker shouldn't have given the penalty.
But isn't it, we talk about the players in the game. The bunker seems to be introducing players. Isn't that a problem?
No, Danny. Again, I can only go back to what I said earlier. That the good that the bunker does 1,000 times outweighs the controversial decisions that the bunker makes. And many of these decisions that they make, or some of the decisions that they make, are still matters of opinion. You know, there'll be split decision about whether the bunker gets it right or wrong. There are very few decisions where it's absolutely clear to all concerned that they got the decision wrong. Has happened, I'll grant you that, has happened. But many of them are these sorts of decisions where it's a matter of opinion. In some cases, it's a matter of which team you support. In some cases, it's just a matter of, you know, I have a different opinion to you about whether the bunker got the decision right or not. Because a lot of our game is about judgment and about areas of grey, not necessarily black and white. So, you know, I don't think we should be suggesting that the bunker isn't valuable in our game to prevent many, many more officiating errors.
But I want you to think of the broad concept of teams taking legal action against referees or the NRL when the decisions are wrong.
Well, it's not something that I want to delve into. My job is about what happens on the field and ultimately being answerable for what happens on the field and being as honest and open as we can and accountable and transparent in making those assessments. So, you know, what clubs do, what sort of considerations clubs go through, that's a matter for clubs. It's really not a matter for me.
Why isn't Horsey, Jared Maxwell answering these questions? I mean, he's the head of the referees. I mean, shouldn't he have to answer these questions, not you?
Well, he's the referees coach, and our tradition has been now for the last 4 years since I've been back in this job that I conduct these weekly briefings where we go through in chapter and verse controversial incidents that happen across the course of the weekend. Today is no different, other than, you know, we've got a very big issue that took place yesterday that's created a lot of controversy, a lot of headlines. Normally I'd be going through incidents from all 8 games, but yesterday's incident has kind of overwhelmed anything else that happened across the course of the weekend. So what we wanted to do today was, again, we wanted to be open and transparent and accountable, and we wanted to stand up here and answer your questions. You know, there will be plenty of people that don't agree with how we view things in here, and you know, that just goes with the job. But we do it as honestly as we can, and we try to be, you know, there's no more transparent job than officiating in a rugby league game.
Where does the stop for all this run? Is it with Maxwell? Does he keep his job? Do you look to move on from him? I mean, people want answers.
Well, I've given answers. That's why I stand here every week. You know, we don't run around sticking our head in the sand saying no comment. I stand up here every week and answer any questions that anyone might want to ask.
You don't talk about the legal action.
No, because it's not my area of responsibility. My area of responsibility is what takes place between the dead ball lines and the sidelines.
That's what's causing this potential.
Yeah, it is. So that's why I'm happy to talk about what's caused that particular question, but it's not my job to answer that question. You know, and I can't be accountable for what West Tigers decide to do. I mean, if you want to know that, you should ask them. You know, that's up to them. I can only talk about what the officials did and then how we have interpreted that and the decisions that we've made internally about whether the decisions were right or wrong.
The only reason the full-time whistle was important is the bunker intervened. Can you clarify if they have a right to intervene in that situation and tell the referee not to blow full-time? Because there was, if you listen to the audio, the referee never actually asked for the bunker.
No, he referred the decision. He referred the challenge to the bunker.
No, initially. At the start, he was trying to listen to the bunker. He said, "I can't hear you. What are you saying?"
Yeah, because they were trying to tell him, because they heard the players asking for a challenge, they were trying to tell him that they still had a challenge left.
That's what I'm asking you. Can you clarify? Can the bunker get involved in that situation and start telling the referee?
Well, again, you know, the role of the bunker and the people in the bunker and the referee's coach who sits in the grandstand and again is in communication with the referee, But they are there to try and assist the referee to come up with the right decisions. So I mentioned earlier that the referee can't really be expected in everything that's going on in 80 minutes to remember who's exhausted their challenges and who hasn't. So when he's being asked about a challenge, and he couldn't hear because of all the commotion that was going on, that's why he tried to walk away from the players several times so that he could hear, they were clarifying for him that there was still a challenge available.
The Tigers want the transcript of the conversation between the bunker and the referee.
Tigers can come in here this afternoon if they want to and listen to that.
Will Klein, hold his place this coming round?
Look, to be honest, we've spent all morning so far deconstructing yesterday. So we haven't even got recommendations or talked about appointments for referees or bunker officials for next week. But they will come out tomorrow. And again, I say that there's no more accountable job than officiating in the NRL. It all happens publicly, and we have a history of putting our hands up when things go wrong, certainly while I've been here, and we'll continue to do that. And where we feel that there is a justification for officials to be accountable for their decisions through demotion, then those sorts of decisions will be taken. But we haven't addressed it at this point. We've just been looking at what happened yesterday.
What also happened, Graham, I guess this is hypothetical, would he be demoted as a video referee or as a referee?
Well, I just don't want to go down that path because we haven't discussed it. So, what we've tried to do, and again, this has been to try and lift the standard of officiating or improve the standard of officiating in the bunker, particularly over the last couple of years, is that we've tried to move more of our full-time referees who actually will referee games on the weekend and then spend other games in the bunker, so that we don't have as many former retired referees working in the bunker. So we're trying to get the guys that are in the habit of making decisions week in and week out by blowing the whistle, also utilising them in the bunker. So they've got dual roles these days, and we expect them to be capable of conducting both roles. And the thing I'd say about Ash Klein is that he's been our number one referee over recent months. He refereed all 3 Origins. He's been operating in the bunker now for many years. He performs to a very high standard. We just don't agree with the decision he made yesterday.
Do you reprimand him, or do you sanction him, given you've conceded that the decision was wrong? I mean, is he told that he's stuffed up, so to speak?
Well, of course, he'll be told that we don't agree with the decision, and he'll be taken through why we don't agree with that decision. And he'll, it's not so much sanction. Obviously the appointments are the most obvious way that officials are either appointed or demoted. But the most important thing is that what happened yesterday, he'll be taken through from a learning perspective to try and make sure that what happened yesterday, that all the officials, and they do discuss these things as a group with Jared Maxwell, and they look at these incidents when they're right and when they're wrong, so that we can get some commonality across them. People are always calling for consistency, and they look at these things and they break them down, and they all try and agree on outcomes so that they can then all implement that consistently.
Brandon, probably West Tigers fans watching what you're saying now, what do you say to them as they're trying to understand why they didn't have 2 points from yesterday's game?
Well, because unfortunately they lost the game. That's why you don't get 2 points. Look, I can sympathise with West Tigers fans, obviously. I've worked in a club environment. I know what it's like to be on the losing end of matches. So, I don't just sit in here and I'm not devoid of any kind of sympathy or feeling for the struggles that clubs go through, particularly when they're not performing that well and they get the opportunity to go so close to a win. But in 4 years, I often see it reported that the NRL has apologised for refereeing errors, and I've never in 4 years stood here and apologised, because I can't apologise for people just making errors. They don't do it deliberately. If someone did something deliberately, then I'd be standing here apologising. My job's to try and explain it and to try and give our verdict on whether we think it's right or wrong, and how we can try and avoid those situations happening again in the future. So, I've never stood here and said, I apologise to a club. And it's not because, again, that I'm insensitive to it. It's just you can't apologise for someone making an error. They don't mean to do it.
So what is the message to fans then who are questioning consistency? And I don't mean just West Tigers fans. I mean, if the 2 points yesterday went to the Cowboys, they sit just outside the top 4. I mean, later on that could affect finals footy, home finals, etc. What is the message then to fans? Decades-long fans who are questioning consistency.
Well, consistency is an often used word in our game, as it is in most sports when it comes to officiating. And of course, we're always striving for consistency. But it's also important to remember that no two incidents are ever the same. They have their own attributes. You know, it's hard to imagine any two situations that are exactly the same. So match officials have to apply judgment to that. So it's not that they're necessarily applying their judgment inconsistently, but they're looking at a set of circumstances and expressing a view about whether they think something has happened correctly or incorrectly. So we're constantly trying to get that better. We're constantly trying to recruit more referees. At junior levels, we need more people coming into refereeing so that they can, again, rise through the ranks. But it's a tough job to recruit people for. I mean, look at the situation today and over the last 24 hours, and you know, that's not a criticism of the media or anyone else. It's just a very high profile position where you open yourself to a lot of criticism. So it's not a job that everyone wants to do. But we will continue to strive to recruit more people, quality people that will raise through the ranks and ultimately go on to be first grade officials. And we've got a range of initiatives that we're looking at to try and improve that process. But we're always trying to get it right. No one's trying to get it wrong. And many of the situations that we deal with week in and week out are not necessarily right or wrong. They just divide opinion. You know, you can put 100 people in a room sometimes and show them videotape, and 50 will say, oh, it should have been that, and the other 50 will say it should have been that. So, you know, you're never going to escape controversy. But when they are wrong, and when we make an assessment that they're wrong, we'll say that.
I heard the notion that the teams who are higher up the ladder or bigger clubs are getting rubber green favourable decisions.
Yeah, look, I don't believe there's anything to that at all. I mean, one of the reasons why I guess clubs at the higher end of the ladder at times may have better luck is that they're playing better. In some cases, they are conceding less errors. They're slicker because they're playing well. And that, again, I'm not denigrating teams at the other end of the ladder. There's always going to be a team at the top and teams at the bottom. But that can be one of the reasons. But again, I come back to if anyone feels that there's any kind of conspiracy going on, how could there be in this environment where they are so scrutinised in everything they do? Everyone has an opinion. Everyone's happy to offer that opinion. How could there possibly be anything other than referees going out and trying to make the right decisions? Who would open themselves to that sort of criticism? No one would do it. And how could you get away with it? They see incidents that take place and they make a decision. Mostly they're right. Sometimes they're wrong.
Just having a look at the challenge, because that obviously does have implications for every game that is close. Back in April, there was a game between the Gold Coast and Parramatta where you said that the Gold Coast slowed down play and forced a challenge they shouldn't be able to have because it was a ruck infringement. Yep. If that's the case, then there was a stoppage in place, so why couldn't they have a challenge? Because judging by what we're saying about yesterday's game, every time there's a stoppage, you can review the whole play.
No, I said every time the referee calls that the last tackle has been completed after full time, if there has been an incident in that particular play, then that can be challenged. But you've got to have a challenge available, and you have to have some basis for it. Otherwise, you're all just staying on the field for no reason.
So it's only in the last tackle of the game where the rule is different?
Well, it's not different. It's how it gets interpreted, because the game can't go on any further than that unless there is something that is determined to have gone wrong. Again, it's no different to them finding out that a touch judge reporting that there was foul play that took place before the last tackle. Time has expired. Touch judge says to the referee, there was a high tackle the tackle before or whatever, the referee hasn't had a chance to act on it yet, and the player gets tackled, time's expired. The referee still has the ability to act on that advice and award a penalty, extend the game for at least one more tackle because a team gets a penalty. So the game doesn't automatically stop regardless of what happens just because the full-time siren's gone or the time has expired.
Do you think clubs are aware of the fact that on the last play of the game they can challenge a hot play? Because this morning Ivan Cleary said he wasn't aware of it. Yesterday, Chad Townsend still thought he was challenging an escort, not a hot play. The Tigers seem to think it can't happen. I mean, the clubs across this rule, has this actually been explained to them?
Well, they've all got a copy of the interpretations document that is updated and sent out to the clubs at the start of each year. And I'm reading directly from it. It says the captain can challenge decisions by the referee from the point of the stoppage back to the previous play of the ball. And in brackets, it actually even says or restart of play, which it was yesterday. Now, that element is in black and white, and they've all got a copy of that. You won't find the black and white that talks about, well, can they mount a challenger after the full-time siren? You won't find that, or not the siren, but well, it is the siren because the siren goes off anyway, but whether they can mount a challenge before the referee actually blows full-time.
Last question, just about Adam Dewey's conversion, right? It's a minute 20 is the rule, and the referee has discretion to call time off if they feel like a player is wasting time. Mm-hmm. The Tigers will argue that the clock started running again as Adam Dewey struck the ball rather than as he started to walk into his conversion attempt. Therefore, the clock should have ended after the kick. Can you clarify, does the clock restart as he's coming into his kick or once the ball is struck?
The clock restarts when the referee waves time back on.
And when should that be?
Well, that would normally be just before he kicks the ball.
So the run-up is not included?
Well, what will happen in that situation?
I know it's a matter of seconds, but in this situation, it's
no,
the difference.
seconds could be critical, right? I mean, as it was yesterday, I mean, I think the kickoff took place with 1 second left, right? So they are critical, right? But again, referees have discretion, and you mentioned it, they have discretion around whether they think players are wasting time or not, and of course there's the 1 minute 20 seconds that's allowable for a conversion before time comes off. But when time goes back on, in some cases can be as variable as the weather conditions. For example, like if a player's having trouble keeping the ball on the kicking tee, the referee might wait until just before the boot hits the ball to wave time back on because he doesn't know whether he's going to have to call time back off again if the ball falls off. So there's a range of factors, but that's a discretionary call by the referee. But of course, when he kicks the ball, or as he starts to move in to kick the ball, as he kicks the ball, then time has to be back on at least by the time he kicks the ball, because then the ball's in flight.
Graham, when you sat there watching yourself yesterday, what was your immediate thought?
I knew I was going to have a bad Sunday night and Monday.
They got it wrong.
My initial view was that, I was hoping when I watched the replay, and I'm just watching it on broadcast like everyone else. I don't have access to multiple camera angles or anything else in the bunker. I'm not in the bunker. I'm just watching it on my home television. And when I saw the replay, I mean, I wasn't concerned about the challenge, but when I saw the challenge being determined, I was hoping that the challenge was going to be unsuccessful because I didn't think there was enough in that contact. Yeah, I mean, it looked a bit spectacular because they kind of both, once they made contact, they both went their separate ways. But I didn't think there was enough in the lead up to that to warrant the penalty kick. So
You see that at home and everyone else can see it, but the bunker can't.
well, who's to say I'm right? Yeah. Well, in your view, and in the view of many. But there'll be others who'll say, well, no, he knew exactly where he was going, and he steered his course around towards the chaser. So, again, they're judgment calls that have to be made, and they're making it under time pressure and with the eyes of the world on them in a game that hangs on that decision. So, if the decision had gone the other way and the challenge had been dismissed or unsuccessful, I may well have been here today talking about why they didn't get a penalty because the Cowboys blew up. They're discretionary decisions that will divide opinion. But at the end of the day, we have to make an assessment in here at the NRL so that we can stand up here and be accountable and open. We have to make a decision about whether we think that on the balance of kind of probabilities, whether the decision was correct or not, and we don't think it met that test on this occasion.